I'll never truly understand how a parent could harm a child, let alone have a role in their own child's death. All day, babies eat, drink, play, looking up to their parent for guidance, comfort, and protection. They don't really understand who they are or why they're even there, but they know that this person who's around them near enough all day, every day, is there for a reason. I want to give you a hypothetical situation for a moment. Imagine you're a child, let's say 2 years old. You're living in a house with your mother and her boyfriend. For whatever reason, you begin to cry, but instead of your needs being settled, you're met with mimics, mocking, and eventual multiple slaps or punches to the point where your bones are broken. Imagine for just one moment that your own mother knows that this abuse is ongoing, and in fact, the abuse is recorded. Imagine after hearing the abuse, your mother doesn't put a stop to things because she's more interested in being with the man, the abuser of her own child. Ladies and gentlemen, this hypothetical situation I've broken down happened in real life, and the two monsters you see on your screen right now have just been on trial for the murder of an innocent, precious 2-year-old boy by the name of Kyrell Matthews. On the 20th of October 2019, a non-emergency 111 call was placed by 20-year-old Phylesia Shirley. Her 2-year-old son Kyrell Matthews had gone, in her own words, floppy and unresponsive at her home address in Thornton Heath, Greater London.
Hello, you're through the NHS 111 service, and what is it I can help you with today?
Basically, Kyrell, he's been acting really funny, like his body's floppy, and his eyes is rolling back, and his chest is like coming out like he can't breathe, and he's not responding properly.
Okay, so is he awake at the moment?
Yeah, but it's like he'll be laying down and then he lashes out, and then he's just not, he looks like he's not here basically. His eyes are just rolling back.
Based upon that information that you have just given me there, it is advised I do arrange an emergency ambulance.
You wouldn't think we'd even be in this position if you rewind the clocks back to 2017. Kyrell was born to loving parents and a wider family that were there as a support system. But at some point between his birth and early 2019, Phylesia and Kyrell's father had split. She was soon with another man, 28-year-old Kemar Brown. Kemar had just been released from prison when he met Phylesia. He was no stranger to the law. Robbery, battery, possession of a knife, and restricting and obstructing a police officer were the crimes he had previously went to prison for. He also had a non-molestation order from a previous relationship. A non-molestation order is aimed at preventing your partner or ex-partner from using or threatening violence against you or your child, or intimidating, harassing, or pestering you, in order to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of yourself and your children. So as you can see, the red flags were there from early, and it seems like a reoccurring theme when we speak on similar case studies. The family always seem to say, when this new partner comes on the scene, in this case Kemar, the other party, in this case Phylesia, start to become distant. The family said they were slowly being pushed away as soon as Kemar had came on the scene. They began seeing less of little Kyrell. His father would see him for the last time at his christening in August of 2019, but by then Kyrell had been subjected to weeks, if not months, of abuse, and it had all been captured on audio recordings from his own mother. She knew what was going on. She even participated in some of it. At the beginning of 2018, Phylesia had secured a job working for Croydon Council doing clerical and youth support work. 1 year on, however, she resigned. The balance between work life and looking after her child was way too much, so she decided to dedicate her full attention to looking after her son. However, when Kemar came on the scene, she picked up on his cannabis habit, and the two would spend all day smoking without going to work. From reports, it seems as if when they first got together, everything was going fine, but in May of 2019, an incident went down that some argue had been the start of the abuse. Well, recorded anyway. On that Spring's Day in May, Kyrell was taken to hospital by his mother, where she told medical staff he had fallen and hit his head on a high chair. He had suffered a significant injury to the side of his face and had to spend 5 days in hospital. Medical staff at the hospital decided to carry out an investigation into the matter. They felt something had been off but came to the conclusion that Phylesia's explanation had been plausible, so the matter was dropped and the police didn't become involved. However, the pair had been placed on the radar of the social services, who visited them at Phylesia's address, although there's no public information available about that visit. We can assume they wrote the case off then, as this was the only meeting they'd ever have with the social services. Before we continue with this next section, I want to give a disclaimer that we'll be talking in depth about child abuse. Now consumed by a life of paranoia due to the cannabis addiction, Phylesia had a feeling that Kemar had been unfaithful, so she'd use a phone as a listening device of some sort, recording Kemar's conversations in other rooms when she wasn't around. The recordings, however, picked up something more horrific. Following the 5-day stay at hospital in the following month of June, Kemar was picked up telling Kyrell to shut up, or similar commands, followed by multiple hitting sounds. Phylesia can be heard shouting, "What did he do? What did he do now?" In one clip, Kemar sings, "Phylesia gets ungrateful when she don't get her own way." This is then followed by the sound of Kyrell crying. The scene is quite chaotic. The crying is followed by banging, which causes Kyrell to scream loud. Kemar says, "Shut it," and "Are you listening?" It's thought that those loud bangs are actually either punches or slaps. Similar clips are heard throughout June and July of 2019. In a recording taken from August of the same year, Kemar can be heard saying, stop crying, yeah," to Kyrell, which is followed by Kemar mocking Kyrell's crying. He then delivers 2 slaps to the toddler. Minutes later, he's heard saying, "What you crying for?" followed by 2 more slaps, at which point Kyrell yelps and faintly cries. According to experts who have heard the clip, they say it's almost as if Kyrell was trying to hold back the tears. In another incident in August of 2019, a loud bang can be heard before Kyrell begins to cry loudly. "Shut up," Kemar responds. Experts say in this clip, it sounds as if Kyrell is being repeatedly hit and mocked at the same time. Kemar tells the young boy to shut up as the sounds of blows are captured on audio. Kemar is then thought to have walked away at this point, but Phylesia is captured on audio. "Kai, shut up. What the fuck you crying for, man?" She then slaps him multiple times as he continues to cry. Similar audio is also captured in the following month of September. On Sunday the 20th of October 2019, a final assault took place which sadly killed Kyrell. By now the young boy had suffered multiple fractured ribs that had already been crushed in the weeks before. On this fateful day, they were crushed again, the injury so severe they killed him. In fact, the exact number was 41 rib fractures which cut into his liver. Experts believe he would have been in agony for at least a month leading up to his death. Back to that October date then, and instead of dialing for emergency services, 999, Phylesia opted to call 111, the non-emergency line. You've had some of that call already, but to sum up the conversation, the handler told Phylesia to give 2-handed chest compressions to Kyrell, although the proper advice would have been to give a 1-handed chest compression. The handler also decided to take it upon herself to call for paramedics, and they rushed to the scene. When they arrived, paramedics said the address had a stench of cannabis and Kyrell was found on his back on the living room floor in cardiac arrest. He was rushed to hospital, but ultimately he would die a short while later. Both Phylesia and Kemar were then arrested but were released under investigation. In December of 2020, however, they were both rearrested and charged after police found those audio clips on Phylesia's phone. So the pair would end up going on trial after denying murder and causing or allowing serious harm to a child. Before the first day of trial, Phylesia would plead guilty to causing or allowing serious physical harm to a child, but continued to deny the murder charge. In court, neither of the two took the stand to give testimony. And experts said that the call handler's bad advice of using 2 hands instead of 1 could have in fact caused the rib fractures. It couldn't be ruled out. And that was Kemar's defence. He took no responsibility. The prosecution argued though that there's no cases on record that have showed chest compressions to cause a cut in the liver from damaged ribs. Either way, after a lengthy trial, Kemar was found guilty on all charges brought against him, but Phylesia was found guilty on the lesser charge of manslaughter. And so a very sad and disturbing case to say the least. It saddens me that Phylesia, instead of being her child's protector, would rather spend more time trying to save her relationship with her own son's abuser. He of course played a much bigger role in the abuse than her. Now you'd think that after the pair were arrested, Phylesia would probably keep her distance given the circumstances of the situation, but nope. She continued her relationship with Kemar. In fact, she's since given birth to his baby. So if you add the timeline up, after Kyrell was murdered, she went on to have a baby with his murderer. Mind-blowing. Kemar didn't have a care in his body though. He couldn't give two fucks. In court when the abuse clips were getting played, Phylesia removed herself from the dock after bursting out crying. He sat with no emotion. Phylesia was blinded by the so-called love of her relationship though. How could you carry on a relationship with a man who didn't care about your son, even at the time of his death? If it was true, which it wasn't by the way, that it was bad advice from the court handler, why wasn't Kemar panicked, saddened by Kyrell's potential death? He literally sat in hospital on his phone. His demeanour appeared unaffected. The pair are due to be sentenced on the 25th of March 2022. Kemar is expected to be handed a life sentence.
It was hard initially for so long in the investigation, which has been going on for over 2 years. We didn't know what had happened to the same extent we do now. They've both given a similar account about what happened, that they both went out and that neither of them knew why he was ill, that he'd had any previous injuries. But then in December, the police found the recordings, which changed things significantly, and because they showed, or you could hear, Kyrell being abused by Kemar on them, so that changed the shape of our case extensively. So to have recordings of the abuse is unique. The police said it was the first time they'd come across it, as with me, to have audio of abuse. Sometimes you have visual CCTV, but audio is definitely unique. Our experts both say it wasn't as a result of CPR. The cause of death was maceration to the liver, which is lower down in the abdomen, and also although there were 5 broken ribs on that day, none of them were such that could have caused the maceration of the liver itself or caused death itself. So our experts are confident that CPR was not the cause of death in this case. Well, the team have worked hard, and it's been a horrific case for us all to work on, and Kyrell was 2 years old, and would have been able to explain the fear he was feeling, the pain he was feeling to those that cared for him, and it was them that in the end caused his death. But he was so defenceless and looked to those who were supposed to care for him, and they were the ones that caused his death, and him so much pain in the months leading up to his death. We can't account for it. We can't understand why the 2 people who were supposed to care for him, or 2 of the people who were supposed to care for him, could do this to them. We're at a loss as to why they would do that to this innocent child as much as the public are. So we're used to dealing with cases of a serious nature on the homicide unit, but this one was particularly horrific because of the graphic content of those recordings, and because of the defenceless young child who couldn't do anything to help himself. And the 2 people who were supposed to look after him the most were those that caused his injury and in the end his death.